Let's go ahead and start standing. So happy to be here with you. We don't need anything today. I'm always going to have my stool as a representation of random furniture. So we all have different spaces at home, but that's what that is today. As you see, I do have some random furniture, but it's not very soft to the touch. But let's just take a moment to get a baseline, 3 breaths. How's your body feeling? Where's your awareness inside yourself? Where's your breath? How's that feeling? Now we're going to give ourselves a little bounce. Start from the knees. And let's try to go real small first. And think of containing the bounce. I'm still here inside of your body. I think the bounce gets to my camera. I don't know what it is. Where did I go? Keep bouncing. I'm still bouncing as I'm fixing technology because that's how we go. Oh, I think I need a new camera. There it is. So we're trying to contain it inside of ourselves. Wow. I get the message. I get the message from my tech. There we go. Coming soon, new camera. But if we're containing this inside, can you move it around through your joints and just feel a little bit of a weightiness through your bones? And see if you can feel that the bounce like happens around the joint. Right? So I'm letting my arms go. I'm thinking about the weight of my hands and my forearms. And I'm noticing if I really go internal, that the bounce is happening at my elbow, my shoulder, and my wrist. So the joint is this place where the force goes through. And the arms are maybe one of the easier places to feel that. But see if you can shift weight to one leg a little bit more and notice if you can sense that in the looser leg. And you can shift. And of course, other things will jiggle, but imagine the springiness is kind of in the joint. And you could stay with that, or we can make it a little bigger. Just getting some blood flow. Last week we played with asymmetries. You could put a little bit of that maybe into your bounce. We're going to bounce for maybe like 10 more moments. I invite you to figure out ways to move it in as many places as possible. You can lift a limb, shift your orientation. Notice what places might be holding your posture. How can you shake your spine a little bit? A few last big breaths. And then nothing abrupt. We're just going to get it to be internal again, kind of consolidate. Did it change at all? And then waking up the body with some touch. Now, we have different proprioceptors that respond to different types of touch, from light touch to tapping, to scrubbing, to ringing. I want you to just feel what feels good. And we're going to just go through the whole body, like 10 moments. You could hold, you could knock on the door. Different places will probably want different things, and just give a little tour as if you're really listening from the receiving part of you, and the giving part of you is responding to what it wants to receive. We're like halfway done, halfway there. Keep going. Missing nothing as much as you can. Some things we can't reach as well. Mhm. And then when you're finished, take a nice breath, like your breath is lifting your arms, and then stretch at the top through your fingers, through your toes, and then let it just fall. We're gonna do that a few times in a few different places. So maybe we're just gonna take a step in a different direction, push the floor, let your breath lift your arms. They might be in the same place. It might be something different. Reach, 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 and then let it fall. And again, finding a little different situation. Reach, 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 fill, 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 everywhere, 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 let it fall. And then as you go in your own timing, notice what falls and what falls less. Right, our arms usually fall a lot, our spine, maybe not so much. That's okay, but see if you can just notice, maybe you can let those places holding you up go a little more. Like 2 more. Yes, you can use furniture. And just fall. And then we'll take a little walk in place. So these are some of the ways we can warm up through not only the physical warm up, but the nervous system, tracking our body. So we're going to exaggerate the movements of walking in place. Let there be a swing, really give in that kind of collapse we just felt. Keeping the spine upright, the breath flowing. Today we're going to talk about obliques as an easy, I think, easy way for our mind to give something else as an option than kind of straightforward, parallel, and stuff like that. So I want you to just pause with one arm in front, pause. And if you turn yourself square from your torso, notice that your arms are at an oblique. And then keep going. You can stretch your fingers, you can keep it soft, you can keep it like a yawn, and then change to the other side, pause. Allowing our spine to turn, our arms feel straight ahead. If we turn our spine to the front, our arms are at a diagonal. Try it again. You can get down low if you're feeling like you want a little more juice in your leg muscles. You could keep it really up and high if you want to keep it soft. Pick a side and pause, and then notice, and then change. And we'll do one more. When you're ready, pause. Keep your arms, turn your chest, and change. And then let's just get into the hips a little bit, side to side. And notice if your torso tends to follow it or if it needs to stay really still. Actually, let's make our torso stay really still and feel the difference. Possible. Let it go. Does it feel easier? Does it feel a little more like you're following? Awesome. So let's, with some energy in our hands. So for me, that means like I'm really reaching my fingers almost like through my skin or through a glove, and I'm going to really press down and out. Let's lift our arms and really track what's happening all the way up through your muscles into your shoulders. And we're going to keep doing that, and we're going to play with different angles. So oftentimes we go straight out to the side, and we're just going to track the engagement in the muscles. We can also go more forward. A few times, really playing with multiple different angles. There's a lot. We're not going to get all of them, but maybe you can get like 4, 6. Let's add a little detail of lifting the air with your hands. And then the next 3-ish, try to find the place where the tone in your arms, which we're feeling more because our hands are really awake, is more distributed and more even. And this can be sometimes a little bit subtle, but I want to just see if somewhere slightly in front of you might feel the most even. So if it doesn't yet, if this is not about getting it right, because yours is going to be your own to find, but it will likely be somewhere a little bit ahead. So see if you can find where that feels like for you. Not too narrow, not straight out to the side, but a little bit like, I call this hallelujah. Hallelujah. And just test it out maybe one or two more times to see the difference. Maybe this many times our arms are just tired anyways. Shake it off. We're going to give some lazy arm love while I tell you a little story. So with our knees bent, one arm is going to support us. We can kind of lock into the bone to just lean into it for now. And the other, we're going to jiggle. Low effort. The fingers and the wrist. And then the forearm, elbow, upper arm. And we're going to see if we can, not effort, but really lazy jiggle up into the upper back. And we're going to see if we can move that around. So the story I'm going to tell you is short. But it's that our shoulder blade is where our arm articulates. So when we talk about the shoulder joint, that is the joint. The blade is on the back and it has this claw where the upper arm bone comes to meet it. And the shoulder blade itself is sitting on our rib cage. And our rib cage, of course, is round. And so our shoulder blade is on this curve in the back. And the joint, like the socket, we could say, it's kind of more like a claw than a socket. Last few breaths to shake it off. Come on up, feel the difference. Let's lift our arms. Notice if it feels any different for you. And then we'll go the other side. So that socket, shake from your fingers. Because our shoulder blade, you guys keep shaking, is on the roundness of our rib cage, the socket is pointing a little bit forward on a diagonal. So when we think of the joints as a place for energy, force, support, effort to go through, it goes through the most efficiently and the most connected into the core of the body when we are at that slight angle. Right now, we're just trying to free up maybe how that shoulder blade gets a little sticky in a world of chairs and computers. So wherever you can feel that jiggle up into your shoulder girdle is good medicine. Last 2 or 3 breaths. Gave them a little break. Let's just try straight out to the side, palms up. Take a map of your muscle effort. Relax down. Straight forward. Different muscle effort. Totally fine. Totally, we can do it. Somewhere in between, wherever you can feel less muscle effort. And that's the trick. When it's boring, it's working. So we're going to put some force through our arm. And our idea that most of us have been taught is if we're going to put weight on our arms that we stack up right under our shoulders. But I want to suggest that we want to go a little bit out and a little bit turned out. So we're kind of in that same place, right? We're in the hallelujah arm. We're in our natural arm swing, same place. And before we go down to the ground, I invite you to play with leaning onto things, which could be furniture, could be walls, and see if you can tune in to the whole shoulder complex as a place of force going through and into the center. And feel the difference when you're squared off, how the force goes up and not in, right? So it's moving my shoulder blade. I can do this. It's no problem. Maybe I want to move my shoulder blade. But if I tip and I lean, I can feel this place where it's then moving into this whole sense of my rib cage, the muscles in the front, the muscles in the back. And I just want us to play with, a varying amount of weight. So that this is where like different levels or even vertical can come in. So that the sensation is your information you're looking for. And if you feel like you think you find that spot, put a little pulse through, and that will give you just a little bit more engage release information to check and to track. For just like 10 more moments, then we'll give the arms a break. You might notice when you're not in that place, little places of stretch. Again, we could want that. We're not saying that's wrong, but we're looking for this place of most efficiency and connection and integration. We actually still have a lot of options from there. Last 5 moments. I'm going to move my furniture. When you're ready, come on up. So we have this idea of somewhere in this diagonal oblique, and I'm just going to give you the hint. Same thing happens in the lower body. So let's explore a little walking, and I'm just going to talk through some things to play with. Now, I don't have a lot of room. You might not have a lot of room. We can go back and forth. If you do have a lot of room, you can just keep going. And I want you to just walk without thinking about it and tune into the feeling around your hips. Now, sometimes your hips might be saying something anyway, but the front of the crease, the sides, the glutes, inside the inner groin, pelvic floor. And generally, there's not that much for them to say because we're made from walking and hopefully we're not walking around thinking about them all the time. But let's try, as you continue walking, turning your feet out a lot, like too much, and feel the messages upstairs. I'm feeling real over effort in like a small little quadrant at the top of the hamstring base of the glute, and then a weird stretch in the front, but it's brief. Feels kind of like a traffic jam. Doesn't feel like it's really going through. Come back to normal walking. You're like, ooh, I don't know. My hips are very happy about normal walking at this moment. And then keep walking with your toes turned a little in. We all have a little different set point, but overdo it. Even if you had a little bit of like a pigeon-toed tendency, and get the messages upstairs. I'm feeling a little bit of a traffic jam in the front of the hip, and like feels like it's working a lot. And then I feel a little bit of strange stagnation in my sacrum in the center, and my quads are working more. And then come back to normal. And just see if you can sense that when you're not thinking about it, hopefully, there's not much also coming at you as a message. Okay. As you're walking, at some point when you're not turning around, pause. Notice your foot and just lean from one foot to the other foot. Notice where they landed. Notice when you lean, the footprint that you're making, where is the weight going on the ground? Take another step forward and do the same. I want to reiterate, I'm not here to say what's right or wrong, but to just bring awareness to some of the habits and some of the training that some of us have received that have trained us out of what is naturally unfolding from the body. So the tendency of the natural form of walking, we can just play with this a little bit. Step forward, change, step forward, change, is that our heels come right underneath our center and that they are kind of getting into a straight line, but the foot itself does not stay on that line. So even though this foot looks pretty straight ahead, it's slightly at this angle. So I want to see if that's happening for you. And that angle could be different for some of us. Some of us, it's going to be very shallow. Some of us, it's going to be more obvious. It's not going that way, but it's not going straight. It's usually like a little deviation. And you might feel that in your foot too, that the tendency is the weight pours more to the outside and to the ball of the foot. It moves, right? If we pour our weight, it moves through the foot. It's not like it just goes and stops. Last set to feel that. Another reason why this is happening, there's many reasons, but another one we're going to think about today is the outside of our whole body, but especially the legs. We know there is more of the connective tissue lattice work. So our fascia is stronger due to more of it and more of this lattice to receive weight on the outside. So we know the IT band is part of that. Let's shake that out a little bit. And we're going to test, kind of like we did with our shoulder, taking a little moment of a step, leaning. Now, how much you lean is up to you. And we're going to go one joint up to the knee, and we're going to lean into the foot with our knee straight over the toes. Take it off. And then we're going to lean a little bit more towards like the little toe. Come back, and then lean a little bit more towards the big toe, or maybe even beyond, and just go slow. And, usually you feel like, you just get this heebie-jeebie feeling, and you're like, I don't want to go there. If you don't have that feeling, let's talk after. But play with a little bit of our angles, kind of like we did with our arms. Everything else relaxed. And we're looking for an evenness and a collaboration and a distribution of tone around the knee and maybe even beyond, maybe even into the ankle and the foot. And just consider where it feels like you're really going through and down and into the ground. You can push back a little bit. Try the other side, shake it off anytime. Get really in tune to the subtleties of shifting and the changes inside through the joints and through the floor. We could think of that as another joint almost. Playing with the angle straight and slightly out and slightly in. Nothing crazy. This is how we learn to listen accurately to the body. Right? We hear listen to the body all the time for good reason. But are we really listening? Are we just hearing something? Do we know what the message is? Relax your jaw, relax the trying to figure it out, and just be in the open curiosity. So the tendency in our design is airing to the outside a little bit in the similar angle as our hallelujah arm will be more resilient and stronger than in. So when we talk about where our knees and toes place, the only thing we want to avoid is in. Straight's okay. Outside might be better for some of us. Outside's also totally fine. So shake that off. Let's take one breath to clear. And however you want to come down, soft or collapsing. Let's take our feet wide, somewhere where they can pivot. So depending on your surface, you get to play with more smooth and more friction. We bring our arms out to the side, and we're going to start to cartwheel to one side and allow your pelvis to turn and your feet to pivot. And let's just come up and feel that on the other side. Super simple. So that I'm not staying in the flat, I'm allowing my pelvis to turn, which turns my torso and my feet. And then we'll take that a little further. Come on up. And we'll have a little cartwheel, pivot down below, bend your back leg. And bring the front hand to your shin and start to turn your heart and facing down a little bit towards the ground. Maybe you want to continue sliding down and we can swim that back arm all the way up. So it's turned in at its maximum. And then we can shift our weight from one foot to the other to start to come up the way we came in. Other side, we can think of cartwheeling, pivot from below, let your hips go back into your bent knee. So not just back, but into a bent knee. Front arm comes to the shin. We start to turn the heart down. We can stop anywhere along the pathway or continue the arm circle to push the palm up to the sky. We're kind of folding into ourselves. And then rewind with the releasing the arm, shift your weight, and come on up. So a lot of things happening here. We're not going to think about them too much. So let's cartwheel, pivot, shift, and bend into the back. And I want us to feel that all of the joints are places of energy moving through as we change, so that we don't have any moment of hitting an edge, locking a joint, and that we can continue to feel like we can move in and out. Yours might look different than mine. You might go lower, you might stay higher, you might bend both legs, you might bend more or less. And we'll just do a few back and forth. And this is where our torso and spine is showing us that it is in obliques and diagonals. See if you can just notice. It's not the only way to describe it. See if you can notice we're not staying in a flat plane. And I don't know about you, but I'm getting a lot of places stretching and opening in a good way. Not too much, but a little bit of everything. One more each way. And then we'll add on, you might want to watch this first. I'll continue, feel free to continue or watch. We're going to start with the same, but then we're going to shift our weight forward. Instead of coming up, go down out to the side and fall into that arm into a twist. And then I'm going to return. So when I fell, my back leg slid away because that felt like where it wanted to go. So now I'm going to shift forward to move the back leg, shift back, shift forward to come up. So all of these shifts are places where, again, we're using the joints as movement through. And you don't have to think about it, but just our ability to move through is doing good medicine for them, is we could say the practice. I'll talk it through again. So we're not going to think of it as a pose necessarily. Let's swim over, shift back. And then as we shift forward, we're going to fall out to the side, into the diagonal. And as I fall, my torso changes. Now my arm is in the diagonal. My back leg can slide. My front foot can twist if I want to open. And then to come back, I'm going to pour my weight into the front arm and leg because all my joints are allowing that. They're not locked. The back leg can shift in so I can bring my center over both legs and then come on up. If it's too much for your brain, you can play with one piece. Let's try it again. Swim across. Feel everything collaborating I'll shift forward and out to the side, allowing my torso to tip. I can stay there a while if I want. If I want to swim, I'm going to shift my weight to the front limbs so I can move the back one and then shift to come up. Try it again. I'm going to show it from a different place. Noticing the diagonals, the getting out of the plane. And the diagonals. And the pouring is going to help your body organize. Nothing too fast. Feeling where you are at all moments. There's a lot of room for variation in here. There's a lot of room for staying for a moment. Do like about one more each side. You could think of, like we started with our bounce that's inside of ourselves. You could think of the body at every shape being able to be an unkinked toes, like a thoroughfare for how you're dealing with gravity and weight and where you're making choices to shift. Finish up if you're still on it. If you're done, just take a moment to notice what you feel at the moment. Where is your awareness now in your body? So we get to come down to the floor, which is always an opportunity to again think of pouring and our diagonals. So we could go straight down, but we might have done that a lot. So why not come down at a diagonal and see if you can find some comfort along the way. This is one idea of thousands. And then we'll be on hands and knees. And let's give our arms a little look. So pouring weight into the hands, slow enough that you can get some information all the way from your wrists up through the shoulders. Play with placement underneath you. A little diagonal. Too far. Notice where that goes up into the muscles in the torso. And if you feel it not go into the torso, that's a clue. So often if we go really wide, we feel the front of the chest, the pecs. Maybe we want that. If we go really narrow, for me, I don't feel anything in my torso. If we want to find that place where there's just a little tone throughout the front and the back of the chest without it being too much. Now, the tendency also includes our hands. So much like our feet, the outer hand is connected to more architecture of our fascia to hold us. So you can have the permission, and I know it might sound weird for some of us, to kind of lean to the outer hand. So let's take a little shift side to side. It could also be fun to soften your elbows. And as you shift, look out to the other side and tune into your shoulder. Shift, feel maybe the outer hand. As you look to the other side, tune into your shoulder. Notice how it changes from when the heart is facing the ground to when we're facing away. If you're not feeling anything, it's subtle. It's not, the loudest information. But see if you can even just notice any little bit of difference. Empty your jaw. And then sit back, shake out your wrists just for a moment. And let's find down dog. We're not going to spend a ton of time there, but let's see what we might think of in our down dog. If our arms want to be at a little diagonal, maybe they want to go a little wider. Maybe your fingers want to turn out a little bit. Just test that out. Couple breaths. And then let's over exaggerate, bringing the hands in and maybe even turning in. And push back and test that out. And again, there could be reasons we want certain alternatives. But in the long run, finding the place where there's the least intense messages and the most collaboration is ideal. Let's consider the legs. Soften your knees a little bit and turn your heels in. See if you can get more pelvic tilt, your tail up to the sky. And then turn your heels out and see if that makes pelvic tilt easier or harder. And turn your heels in just to play. And then let's come on down to our knees and take a seat. I'm having some wardrobe malfunction. I hope there's reasonable sound today. So take a moment just in a cross-legged position. Even here, we have a little bit of asymmetry because we're never going to have the legs exactly the same, one's in front. But let's try thinking of our diagonals. So if we free our legs in front, lean to one side and sweep your legs to the other side. Let them land somewhere that looks something like this without pulling them in. And notice we are asymmetrical in our weight, in our legs. And we're kind of having this forward inclination to one side. If we were to follow where our pelvis led us, we would be at the diagonal. And usually that's a little bit sweeter than trying to be right in the center. Intentionally asymmetrical. But let's add whatever the folded back leg is, that arm, sweeping across a spiral staircase up behind you. And then exhale, sweep back down. And if you want, you can kind of squeeze it out and wring into yourself. And then let's try again. Notice where the bottom hand lands in relationship to your torso. Exhale, maybe a little extra, up to you. Some knees and ankles are not going to like this. Let's take it up if that feels good. So our bottom hand is going to be not too far back. When I bear weight, it's actually slightly in front. This is my straight back. It's slightly in front of the side of my body. And I'm going to reach up and kick down into the floor. And then I'm going to let myself come down the spiral. How far? Up to you. Try two more and you might make a different choice of your placement. Where can you pour through your shoulder, through your arm, through your wrist? Kick down into the floor. And then come all the way back. Maybe a little squeeze. And one more. We'll sweep our legs through the front like our breakdancing move of the day. And if we look at just the folded back leg and we let our torso follow where it wants to follow, we have, if we just took that, a little diagonal. So apart from the asymmetry here, let's sweep across the spiral. When we spiral, we're increasing the opening of the front of that hip. We're going to talk about that hip this time. Sweep down. Ring in. This is where we are with the world of chairs. As we come up the spiral staircase and we reach that knee away, we're actually accessing the hip flexors in a really direct spiral. Start to come up. So we have our arm down below, doesn't go too far back. We're going to push the floor. We're going to kick the floor. And as we're wrapping in this diagonal, see if you get a good stretch in the front of that open hip or even deeper into the belly. And then come on down. 2 more. If you don't feel it, it's okay. That also might be not the place that has a lot to say for you. If you do a lot of sitting or driving, it might be saying something. One more. Let's do one more. Through the joints, through the arms, through the legs without kinking the back. And come on down. Sweep your legs to the front. I have 2 options for us. I think everyone will be able to do one of these 2 options. And we're looking to stretch the psoas with this oblique, because that our psoas is in a spiral. This one is going to be well, let me do the simpler one first. Probably the more accessible one first. Is an asymmetrical cobra. So one leg comes up, very easy. And we look over that shoulder. So we're giving this spiral to the long side and breathing into that belly. An oblique is just a little section of a spiral. And then, of course, we can change sides. So I'm going to let you decide if you're like, oh, yeah, there is the psoas. And the other one that I find very fascinating, or I did, but not everyone's knees will love this, is we're going to sweep our legs like we did before. Hero's pose, Supta Virasana with this bottom leg. I'm going to sneak around through the diagonal or pieces of a spiral to lean back instead of going up the spiral staircase, down it. Going to reach through that knee, and I already feel a quad stretch. I have spent lots of years all the way down on the floor with people standing on my legs, and I wouldn't necessarily feel this much quad stretch. Maybe I'm old, I don't know. But if we get that line of the tissue, we can get directly into it. Then we can continue to come down, maybe even onto our side, which part of our brain might think looks bad for the body, but you'll be surprised, it's actually pretty comfortable. Your body will tell you. We could come all the way onto the back. We could put this front foot on the floor, but I would recommend letting it be at an angle. Only if you are capable and comfortable to be here. Stretch in the belly of the muscle, wonderful. In the joint, no bueno. I have found in classes that this can be a game changer for the lower back, for the knees. And if you're in your asymmetrical cobra, you might also be complete and rest anywhere you want in child's pose, or try it again. If you're on this asymmetrical Supta Virasana, the way out is to roll to the side and just escape that way, even if you're halfway up. Let's try the other side. I'll talk this through because it has a little bit more vulnerability because we're right on the ground. There's not a lot of wiggle room, right? So I lean away in the oblique, the diagonal. I reach through that knee with my tail. I just see that might be enough. Or I can continue to come down the side and just check. Back is happy, joints are happy. One side may be very different. Maybe I want to go onto one shoulder blade. Maybe I want to go onto both. Maybe I want to put a little bit of my foot on the ground. Notice it's usually the outer edge. Few breaths on the second side, which is not going to feel the same because we are inherently asymmetrical. Jaw relaxed. And then when you're ready to come out, just roll off to the side. If you're in Cobra on the floor, we're going to come meet you there. If you just came out of that, give your legs a little wiggle jiggle. And then let's all come to child's pose. And again, we have obliques. The toes close, the knees apart. And the sweetest place for the upper body is the elbows wide and the hands under your head or near to the head. Let it be a restful place, consolidation. Let the breath flow down to your belly and feel the weight of your head and your tail. And we'll come on up for one last seated position. Last week we played with asymmetry in a straddle. We're going to play with both legs out, but with the ability to just tip a little bit. So I guess it's also asymmetry, but we're coming at it from a different place than fully one leg in. Instead of going straight down the center, actually, let's just see what that feels like. Some of us love this. Great. Don't stop loving it. But get the message. Okay, where do I feel stretch? Where do I feel any congestion, traffic jams? And then it's almost like you have water pouring out of your ear and you just let yourself tip and see what you feel. You know, we are more on one leg, so that one leg might have something to say more. Allow, if your arm is inside your leg, to go back outside your leg. We are stretching tissue even if we don't feel the intense stretch sensation. You know, notice where your body has arrived to. That is a range of motion. Whether or not it feels like a stretch. Might feel like a stretch in different places. Does it allow freedom in other places? Let's try the other side. If there is anyone who has strain in the lower back or behind the knees, again, the joint areas, these can be really wonderful where we can move the stretch into tissue. No, not everything is perfect. Just notice. And then find a little back and forth. Maybe you can imagine water rolling inside your skull, out your ear, down into the forehead, and the rest of the body just following that. Even if it's up high. Some of the gift of the sway is we're going to organize in that oblique, but we're going to give it a rest and then visit the other side. Like rocking a baby, it can be soothing. I'm going to give you the option to rock your way down into the straddle stretch or start to rock your way back to final relaxation. And we are going to keep going a little further back. And pushing forward. If it feels like a lot of work, get lazy. And how can you pour your weight, pour your weight? And then at just one of those times, you're gonna roll onto your back from like a fetal position. You're just gonna roll down. Give yourself a moment to rest. to integrate. That could be in stillness, that could be in spontaneity. Let your awareness move into the container of your body. A moment to scan into your feet and your ankles, the inner through line, the inner flow up the shins and through your knees, up through the thigh bones and through the hips into the pelvis. Up through the lower back and through the torso. Imagine right in front of your spine, following up to your shoulder blades, and then taking the awareness out through the shoulders, upper arms, through the elbows, through the roundness, through the wrists and hands. And then returning to where we split from the heart through the neck and the head. Like there are open pathways, open channels throughout the whole body. You're welcome to stay internal and rest as long as you like in your own home. One beautiful benefit of us gathering this way. Or if you're ready to come back, or whenever you come back, do it slowly and see if you can still feel this through the jointness. This watery container with unkinked hoses. And if you're interested, think of that at least once or more while you're moving through daily life. How can you find the angle in to keep the joints open rather than crunched, closed, even just once? Think of that. And I sincerely hope that this can help free us to move as much in any way as possible for as long as possible. So thank you for being here.